This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. Today we're on the big island of Hawaii, and I'm with Rick Bozzona, horticultural consultant. Whereabouts on the island are we?
We are on the slopes of Hualalai in a place called the Kailua Cloud Forest, right above Kailua Kona.
And this was an active volcano at one time.
Yes, it was. It erupted in 1801 last, and in fact the lava flow is right about 50 yards off in the distance there.
Oh, is that right? Mm-hmm. Today we want to talk a little bit about the environment here. How much rain do you get?
We get about 60 inches a year officially, but most of the actual moisture comes from precipitation on the foliage of the forest.
I noticed, in fact, for example, now we have a clear sky, and yet there's rain coming down, or a little bit of a mist coming down. The other thing, this is kind of a sanctuary, a wildlife sanctuary, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you're growing primarily, you're working with nature in this area.
Yes. What we're doing here is we're trying to kind of be an example for others to follow in a way in that we are trying to work with the forest in trying to show others that no matter what we do as man, we always are going to have some kind of impact. But we are trying to create a garden that shows a minimal impact on the forest.
You know what I think our viewers will particularly like is to see so many of the plants that they grow as house plants growing here in a native setting out where they're fully exposed, and the height that they have in the home is a little bit different here.
Oh yeah, they look completely different here.
Yes. And I need to ask you just about a couple plants, because I see some impatiens here, and I see a beautiful blue flower over there. And blue is a difficult color to bring in the garden. What is that?
That's called the blue ginger.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's in the same family as Wandering Jew, family Columellinaceae.
And are the ferns here native to this area?
The ones that are directly here in the foreground are native to Puerto Rico.
Oh, they are?
These ones up here. And out in the distance there, those are all native. We've only planted non-native species right around the house and along the trails.
I see. So in the plantings here, do you change them at different times, or are these here year-round?
They're pretty much here year-round. Every once in a while we need to thin things out.
Sure.
But that's year-round.
What is the elevation here?
We're at about 3,000 feet above sea level.
Yeah, beautiful tropical plants. What a great place to visit. Rick, thanks very much for sharing it with us.
All right, my pleasure.
When I go out to buy plants for the garden, I always look for certain things, and I'd like to share a few ideas with you. For example, here are the same plant, same price, and yet look at the difference. This one has a whole bunch of new growth coming on it, or what I call breaks, a lot of new starters from the plant itself. And this does too. This has quite a few. But notice one other thing, it's one-sided. So you don't really get all that nice a plant from it, and yet this is double the size and at the same price. So why not get the best value? Here's another good example. In the same bed, same price. This is a plant called Strandvasia, which, by the way, does very, very well in real bright, hot sunlight. It has berries and covered with flowers in the spring. But notice how bushy this plant is, and look at how spindly this plant is. And it, too, is one-sided, really. So by just taking that minute to take a good look at them, you can see what a difference, what a much better value you can get. Here's another one. This is a rosemary. This is in bloom now, but keep in mind one thing, that this other one is going to bloom as well. And look at that plant and look at this plant. Same cost, and yet you've got a much bushier plant, one that's much more dense in foliage and a lot better too. And I want to just take a second, if I can, and grab a couple things here that are in the soil. See those little round balls? Very often people think that those are slug eggs. They're not at all. Those are actually fertilizer pellets, slow-release fertilizer pellets. So don't worry about them at all. In fact, just go ahead and add them to the soil when you're planting, because they'll fertilize your plants on a slow-release basis. Okay, let's go back into here then. Look at here, same price. Beautiful plant like this, and same price, this one here. Notice one other thing too. See the foliage on this? This one's been burned by frost or sun or something else, whereas this one's relatively clean from any damage at all. So here you have a plant twice as large or better and much, much bushier at exactly the same cost. Now there's one other thing. If we look in here, we're going to find weeds. And I think that's very important when you buy any new plants at all for your garden, that before you put the plants in the ground, be sure that you check to see if there are any weeds and get them out right away. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting these weeds forever, and you're introducing new weeds maybe to your garden. So just take that few seconds. It's really important. Here's another good example. This is an Andina. This one has 3 stems in it. Same price, remember. This one here has only 2 stems. And although they're similar in appearance right now, the one that has 3 stems, remember, is going to have 50% more of a bushy habit of growth. So why not? They're the same price. So beware and do a good job of shopping when you go after your plants for your garden. This is a great time of the year to find bargains at the nursery, and that's exactly what I did here. But what do you do when you get home with them and the ground is frozen, or it's too cold or too wet and you don't want to go out and plant them? Do what we call healing in. This is a very simple process. This is compost here, and all I need to do is to actually dig a hole and take the plant, pot and all. And actually, that's not quite deep enough, so I better go a little bit deeper. And plant pot and all, simply that. And pull the mulch in around. And that's what we call healing in. Now, when the weather's suitable, we can take this up out of the mulch, take it out of the container, and actually plant it in a planting location. But why not take advantage of those sales? For example, here's another one. My wife has been wanting a forsythia in the garden because of the bright yellow flowers and how beautiful they are in January or late January and early February. And it's a bare root plant. So you can see it's not in a container at all. And all I need to do once again is simply dig a hole in this mulch material and pull the soil in. And when I'm ready to plant, I'll dig it up again and put it in its permanent planting location. Now here's a different situation. Notice here, I've got a rhododendron. It flowered this past fall, and of course we always pick off those spent flowers. But what's happening, you'll notice, is that the buds are beginning to swell. And this is a little bit exposed here. So let's take it in under the tree and plant it, and we'll use a different planting material. This is such a beautiful red rhododendron. But you know, rhododendrons are a little bit on the tender side. And in addition, the buds on this particular one, as you can see, are beginning to swell. Had some flowers in the fall already. So we need to give it some protection. Now, first of all, you can just dig a hole in the ground until you're ready to plant it, unless the ground's frozen, of course, and stick the plant in and pull the soil around. Or here are some other great materials for healing in. This is bark, and this, of course, is straw. Excellent material for providing protection for plants during the winter. And, of course, leaves. But what's important here, we have the beautiful evergreens above. So we have some protection from above, and that's why I chose this spot for the rhododendrons. And is what I'll do in this particular case, just to give you an idea, on this side of the plant, I'm going to pull in some bark. On this side, I'll just pull in a little bit of straw around it, and this side we'll pull in some leaves. See how nicely that plant is healed in? So why not take advantage of the sales at this time of the year and select some plants and save some money at the same time? Looking for some color by the entry area to your home? Boy, you can make up a beautiful winter container. And I'm going to show you how. First of all, use a plant that flowers at this time of the year, like the Sasanqua camellia. This happens to be a variety called Yuletide. And you can see all the buds coming on the plant, so it's really going to be pretty. Take it out of the container. I'm going to loosen the roots just a little bit. And I'm going to take some of this material off the top so it doesn't look quite so bad. And simply then dig a hole in the center of the container and be sure that we set the plant's front side forward for you. And then let's add to that also a beautiful winter flowering heather. And I'll take it out of the pot as well. Whoops, there we go. Look at the root system on that. Boy, we've got to loosen that, or it will remain within that root ball. So we'll just massage it a little tiny bit. And let's put it right over here towards the front. And by the way, we're going to do this so that it looks good on all sides, not just the front and the back. So now this is going to give us color. This is Mediterranean hybrid, and this will flower clear into May. And let's also take and use one of the winter flowering pansies. They are so beautiful. And whenever it's warm throughout the winter season, we'll get some flower on them. And remember to use the light colors because they really show up the best. And in this case, I'm going to use the nice light yellow. And then right next to it, back here in the back, I'm going to use the blue because that goes so well with the red of the camellia. And so we'll just set that right in here. And then right in front of it again because of its light color, but the smaller flower, which is really attractive. Another variety, this is what I call the true ice pansy. So we'll just massage that root system a little too. Make sure the soil is moist, by the way, on all of these plants before you begin transplanting them. And we'll face it forward once again. And the pansies will come around anyhow. Now on the back side here, I'm going to use a couple other plants. I'm going to use, for example, this Gaultheria procumbens, wintergreen, which has beautiful foliage at this time of the year and also will have the berries on it. So it's a really nice plant. And that gives us then a whole different texture, doesn't it? And this is what I would consider the backside of the container. However, it still will be attractive because the foliage colors and textures go together well. Isn't that a pretty planter? Right for your entry area at this time of the year. It's a great time to provide some color near the entry area on the patio or maybe on the lanai. And these winter planters are especially good for that. African violets are one of the beautiful winter flowering indoor plants, but there are a few things you should know about them and their care. Look at the beautiful colors on. Oh, they're in flower at this time of the year. You'll notice here that I have them in the windowsill, and normally the best place to put them is in a northern window where they don't get direct sunlight. This happens to be a south window, but there are large evergreen trees out there that keep this area shaded, so they get very little direct sunlight at all, and they love this kind of a location. Now, some people will put them in artificial light as well in the home, but that's maybe more for the hobbyist than for the average homeowner. Now, let's also talk a little bit about watering. I think that's very essential. And the important thing here, this is what my wife does. She takes a bowl with warm water, not hot water and not cold water, but about room temperature, a little bit warmer, and puts about a half an inch or an inch of water in the base, and then actually sets the African violet in that. In a matter of about a half an hour or so, actually all she does with her finger is feel the surface soil. When that's moist, then it's had enough water. And it varies from home to home, but in our home, she only waters the African violets about once every 2 to 3 weeks. They don't take a lot of water, but watering them from the bottom really helps. And never use cold water, and never miss the foliage. Humidity is very important with African violets, but what you should do is probably take a tray, fill it full of gravel, and then fill water just below the top of the gravel and set the African violet on top. That provides an island of humidity around the plant, and you don't need to mist then because the humidity is coming from below. You know, it's really that simple. The African violets are a lot of fun and easy to grow. Now, what about transplanting? This little African violet is kind of pot bound at this stage, so we'll hit it out of the pot. Ooh, that's dry too, and look at, I lost a leaf on it. So is what we'll do, when we go from one size pot, we only go one size up. And we'll use a good potting soil, good all-purpose potting soil. Better loosen those roots just a little too. And normally I'd suggest that you moisten the soil when the soil is that dry before you start transplanting. But I'll do that afterwards. And see, just set it so it's right at ground level, not too deep again, but right where it was previously planted. It's that simple, and you know, if you give the African violets the right care, it'll make all the difference in the world. What about starting a new African violet? Just take a leaf, take some potting soil, we use this old pot, and submerge it in the soil so a little bit of the leaf down here at the bottom is covered. Enjoy those African violets, but give them the care they need. Today I've got three really interesting winter flowering plants for you. For example, the first one here is the witch hazel. And there are a whole bunch of different varieties, and they go all the way from yellow through red with their flowering. You can see here the yellow just coming in. And you know what's really nice about this is the fragrance. You know, any plant that flowers during the winter, or almost any plant, has a fragrance to draw insects for pollination purposes. And this is certainly one of them. It is a deciduous plant, so it loses its leaves during the winter. And the interesting thing, I think, is that you can train these into a shrub that'll grow, probably 6 to 8 feet tall, or you can train them into a tree that'll grow up maybe to 25 feet in height. So they're really nice plants. And you can cut some of the branches, of course, and use them indoors for color. Now here's another plant. This is evergreen, and this is called the pyracantha. It's my plant of the week as well. The beauty of it is that it has the berries that attract the birds and provide food for them during the winter season. It's excellent food for them, but it's very attractive, and the spring flowers are white and it's attractive as well. Then our third plant of the week this week is the beautiful heather. The winter flowering varieties, there's at least 12 of them. For example, here's one over here that's called Kramer's Red. It's very, very attractive, dark foliage on it. This one here in the front is called December Red, and it's really more pink than red, but nevertheless a nice low-growing variety. And then these taller ones here are the winter bell heathers. Most of the varieties that people are accustomed to are the Mediterranean hybrids. They're pink and also the white as well. These are three great plants of the week, and you'll find them at your local nursery or garden center. Next, let's talk about grafting, and I'm with the Environmental Service Manager at Briggs Nursery in Olympia, Washington, Bill Smith. Bill, what is grafting?
Grafting is the union of two different plant species, and we usually try to keep them within the same genus and species, and it's for basically 2 or 3 different reasons. One is that there's a lot of plants that will not root in general rooting conditions.
Sure.
2, number is that there are plants that need a different root system so that they control the growth. So those are 2 of the big reasons for grafting.
Can you show us how you graft?
Yeah, what I'm going to demonstrate here, it would be Japanese maple.
Oh, okay.
Acer palmatum.
Good example, isn't it?
And we use just a general seedling, and we're going to put a lace leaf or Acer palmatum dissectum variety onto it.
Okay. So,
I think
and this is the rootstock.
This is the rootstock.
Okay.
And this would be what we would call the sign or the variety we're trying to go to.
Okay. And you do this during the dormant season?
You can do it dormant season, we call it grafting. Summer season with greenwood, you'd call it budding or stick budding, whatever is in the general term.
So you can do it more than one
You can do it more than one way. What we do generally here on a dormant Japanese maple graft is that we make a incision, let me drop this, about 1.5 inches long.
Okay, just barely under the...
Just barely under the skin. All we want to do is expose the cambium layer.
Okay.
We'll set this to the side. We take the sign, and I want to take and get 2 buds on it.
Okay, so you're just using a small portion.
I'm using
of
a small portion with 2 dormant nodes showing.
Okay.
And then we'll basically do the same
same
thing on
thing
this
there.
side. We come down short.
Okay.
I'll come down this way short and make
come to a
a
point.
sharp
Yeah.
hook.
Okay.
Excuse me. Then we go in. We put them
it
together.
Uh-huh.
Cambium layer like this, tight. At the nursery, I use grafting rubbers, budding rubbers, or they're called either one.
Sure.
What we want to do is get this so that the cambium layers are meshed together. And basically what we're doing is crushing those cells so when they unite, they'll join and be a graft union.
And you just tie them off.
We tie them off.
And that's that? Simple? And that's it?
Basically a simple graft. Then what happens is that we either use some variety like a tree coat or rubberized material, or at the nursery I use plastic tape
Oh, and then just tape over it.
just to make a small greenhouse type condition.
Thanks, Bill. That's all the time we have today. Hope you can join me at the same time again next week.